Hi, this is Paul from Model Builder International with another review. This one is for the 1/35th scale MiniArt SU-85 with a full interior. So, a bit of background. The SU-85, a Russian tank destroyer, came out basically as to destroy the German heavier tanks. It was a modification of the earlier SU-122, basically the same hull for the most part, different gun. Essentially, the 122 had its gun replaced with a high-velocity 85mm anti-tank gun, which made the SU-85. Production started mid-43, first vehicles with their units by August, and then when the upgun T-3485 tank entered mass production in the spring of 44, obviously there's no point having a tank destroyer with the same gun, so production was stopped in late 44 after just over 2,000 vehicles were replaced, and then the SU-100 came in. The only other 135th SU-85 on the market is the Tamiya one, which actually dates back to 1975. Dragon did an 85M in 1998, which was re-released 6 years ago. But they're slightly different. The 85M is really an SU-100 hull with an 85mm gun fitted. Basically, they had the SU-100 hulls produced before they had the gun ready, so they stuck 85mm guns in it instead. Either way, the MiniArt kit is the only modern kit of this vehicle on the market. Another thing I've noticed is I've often wondered why MiniArt kits have so many small sprues. You know, usually you open a box and it has a bunch of big sprues, and that's your lot. So I think I've worked it out, and I think some others have as well, is just by changing a few of the small sprues, you can have a completely different kit. So with this SU-85 kit, if we ignore the interior, if we swap should say parts of the fighting compartment, the walls, then we can make an 85M. If we swap those bits and the gun, we can make an SU-100. So it's an easy way for them to roll out multiple variations on a common theme with a minimum of effort and wasted parts on your sprues. Admittedly, it won't build up your spares box so fast, but it makes good business. It keeps the prices down. So, enough of my waffle. Let's have a look at opening the box, see what's inside, and then we'll move on to having a close-up look at some of the parts while we go through the pages of the instructions. Hi, this is Paul from Model Builder International, and today we're going through the MiniArt SU-85 with the full interior kit. And as it says here, this is the mid-production version. You can also tell that from there's 4 bolts here. The final production versions had 6, and also this pistol port is in the right place as well. Early on it was higher up on the side there. So it's quite a big box. There's going to be a lot of parts. As it says on the box top there, there's a grand total of 805 parts, just over 700 plastic, just under 100 photo etch, 10 clear, and it contains a full interior, transmission, engine, and the fighting compartment. So to see, there's not much on the outside, but there's some photographs of the interior and the exterior as well. But let's have a look inside and see what we get. So basically we have one instruction manual and one big bag. So let's have a quick flick through the instruction manual, then we'll open that back up. So the instruction manual is glossy outer, paper inner. Colour is done, where colour call out is in ammo, some basic information in Russian and English, sprues, and another page of sprues. What is it there? There's 50 or 60 sprues of various sizes. Again, we end up with some piles in various places across the bench. And straight off with building the engine, radiators, Then building full transmission. Cut some parts, some go internal, some bits fit external, driving area, full transmission. And like the SU-122, I wonder if we can swap those springs out. I'll have to see if I can find some metal springs. Full interior, ammunition, and building it up. And main gun. Lots of steps, up to step 60 already. Almost there. Nice diagrams, exploded U's, clearly labelled. Same fuel tanks as the 122. I wonder if there's more PE this time, some moulded. Notice the last ones had some of these straps were moulded, some were PE, but we'll see. And then right at the end, I've since found out that this box is actually a heater. The crew used that either for food or for warming the engine up when it was below freezing outside. And a couple of decal options on the back of some more photographs. So, I'll be back in a minute when I've opened this big box of parts up. So, inside the big box, we have a decal sheet with 2 clear part sprues bagged separately. The decal sheet contains more decals than you're going to need, or more numbers than you're going to need. So, if you have your own reference, you can go your own way with the decal choices. Inside there will be the photo etch. Let's just open this up and have a look. See what we get in here. Oh, and there's the photo etch. And I've used an old box top to make it up, and it has there's a plastic film on that as well. And then we have another bag with the small bits. There's your tracks. There's the main, or some larger parts. There's the heater box I was talking about. This will be specific for the SU-85 because the pistol port has to be in the right place on the right hand side wall, that one. And here's some interior stuff, ammunition holders on that side, the breech of the gun on the right hand side, small parts. Not seeing ejector pin marks in awkward places yet. Sprue gates seem to change size depending if it's a small part, it's a small sprue gate. If it's a larger part, they seem to be a bit larger, which works quite nicely. This is the transmission. And another big sprue. Here's the engine down here. Right, now what I'll do is let's have a look at this bag. Contains all the smaller sprues by the looks of it, and some of these you've got a few sprues where you've got 10 of each. So I'll open these up and try and sort them into little piles. Back in a minute. So yeah, this is all the plastic out the box, and there is a lot of it. All this lot here, this was in the internal bag, along with these 2 sprues, which are some parts for the exterior. I'm noticing the size of the sprue gates varies. If it's a small part, then the sprue gates doesn't have nicely small. If it's a bigger part, then the sprue gates tend to be a little bit bigger, which works okay. It's good. The stronger gates holding the bigger parts in place. Notice even though everything was bagged up, it's bagged tightly. Nothing has come off any of the sprues. Everything's still secured. The ejector pins, the ones I'm seeing are all in good places out of the side plate. You don't have to fill them. Nobody's ever going to see them, even if you lifted the interior, or made the interior visible. That's one thing with these interior kits is, okay, you put all this time and effort in putting the interior in there, and I always feel that it's a shame to then box it all up and nobody will ever see it again. So you have to find a way to display it. That's, the engine hatches, kind of have to be open in this. The hatch is open to make it all visible. Or maybe just do it so you can lift the top off and have a look inside. But at first glance, it looks like it's obviously a very comprehensive build. There's a lot of detail. This is competitively priced as well, very competitively priced compared to kits from other manufacturers, especially those with full interior detail. So, next step, let's have a closer look at the instructions, and let's have some close-ups on some of these parts and see what the level of detail is, and take it from there. Okay, so now we know what's inside the box, let's go through the instructions. Front cover, pretty much as you would expect, lots of details basically off the box top as well. Turning over the second page, a brief introduction to the SU-85 mid-production. And down at the bottom, all the colours you're going to need, and they're called out in ammo, which I'm quite getting used to. I quite like ammo paints. The next 2 pages are sprue layouts, and there's a lot of them. Oddly enough, I did find an extra sprue FM, that isn't listed on this, so as I go through, I wonder if I'll find a use for it. Now we start actually building the kit itself at last. So we start off with the engine, which, as you can see, is quite nicely detailed. Crankcase, carburetor, exhausts, radiator, a little bit of the plumbing that goes around. Opportunity to add you more, and if you're going to display it with the engine visible, why wouldn't you? The next page just finishes off the very last pieces of plumbing for the engine, but is mostly about the transmission. There's some nicely detailed parts on here, as you can see, as you put together the transmission and stick it on the floor of the hull. Page 7 has us pulling together some small details to build up the driving position, and also adding the final touches to the engine, and adding the exhaust, which we have to cut into 2 pieces and keep part of them for exterior later on. Page 8 seems pretty straightforward. We finally put the engine into the lower hull and match it up with the transmission, and then we start putting together some of the suspension. It'd be interesting to see those springs, see if they can be replaced by real metal springs, and we give ourselves a real suspension. Page 9 has us adding a few more fine details to the interior suspension items inside. Also putting some sidewall details on the sidewalls inside the fighting compartment, and putting together one of the ammunition racks. Page 10, and we're up to step 40 already. That has us putting the first side of the lower hull in, and the first exterior suspension pieces, some more interior details, and we start putting together the pieces on the inside wall of the front of the fighting compartment. So on page 11 we're finally up to where you'd start on the Tamiya kit, except you've got a whole heap of interior detail which is not fitted in that kit. And here we start adding the ammunition, the other side of the lower hull goes on, and the front plate of the fighting compartment goes on. Page 12 is mostly about building the breech end of the main gun, including the gun sight, along with some smaller details that will be fitted later. Page 13 has the last of the details go on to the breech end of the gun, and that gets fitted into place. The firewall between the fighting compartment and the engine compartment goes in, along with the last of what appears to be the fuel tanks. On page 14, the interior details of the 2 sidewalls go into place, along with some photo etch machine gun ammunition boxes, and then we build up some main ammunition storage and start working on the hatches and the top of the fighting compartment. Page 15 has the interior details on the top of the main fighting compartment. The road wheels go on and all the running gear, and we start working on the ventilation hatches for the engine decking. Page 16, steps 64-65 is reasonably straightforward, just putting together the engine deck, and some photo etch details go on here as well. Page 17, and the main engine hatch goes on the aft deck. You have a choice here of either using a plastic part or using photo etch parts for that. And now we're starting to put the big pieces together. The side walls go on the fighting compartment along with the main block of ammunition. So now we're starting to get close to the end. The main engine deck goes in place and the tracks get put in place. And I've read elsewhere that even though it says they're working track links, you do actually have to glue them together. They have a tendency just to come apart. Page 19, and as we get towards the end of the build, there's less happening on each of the pages. This one's all about the aft wall of the fighting compartment. The roof that you've already done goes into place, mud guards, and a few PE details. Page 20 is add a few more hatches, add the exhaust, and using those parts you save from step 25 on page 7, add the main gun barrel and a bit of PE holding down a canvas roll. Page 21 sees you adding the external fuel tanks. Interestingly, you can add 4 fuel tanks, but only 2 of them can have photo etch. You'll always have to fit 2 that have moulded on straps holding them in place. And the other bit on here is some photo etch holding in some spare track links. And finally on page 22, step 78, we're at the end of the build, we add the wooden box that's fitted to the back of the vehicle that holds the heater that's used to warm the engine and also for heating food, and a couple of small details on a hinge. So there's 2 decal options for this kit. The first is from an unidentified unit in the winter of 43-44 in whitewash. I've also supplied details of the sidewalls without the whitewash and with white lettering, so you could also do this vehicle in the following summer. The other decal option is after the name of Captain Otakar Jarosz of the 1st Czechoslovak Army Brigade in 1944-45. Obviously both are mostly green apart from the ones in whitewash. The colour info and profiles are provided by Ammo. And the back page of the instruction book shows some CAD drawings of the build as it progressed. So, an overall conclusion. This kit is obviously very highly detailed. There's nothing like it for an SU-85. With a full interior, the Tamiya kit is just the exterior, but this kit still has more detail on the exterior than that. It's a build that's going to take you some time. There's a lot of detail. Be interesting to see how people find ways to actually display some of this interior detail. I can't see any obvious drawbacks to this other than the sheer level of detail to it. Maybe the tracks could be a little fiddly, might actually need gluing anyway. Other than that, I don't see any major problems with this other than the amount of time it's going to take. For the level of detail in this kit, it's very competitively priced and it should do well. And with just changing out a few sprues, I'd hope in the near future we'll see an SU-85M, and then next maybe an SU-100 will follow soon.